Hello, and welcome back to the Loco Files. In today's episode, we'll be looking at the Great Western Railway Manor class. The Great Western Railway 7800 or Manor class is a class of 460 steam locomotive. They were designed as a lighter version of the Grange class, giving them a wider route availability. Like the Granges, the Manors used parts from the Great Western Railway 4300 class moguls, but only on the first batch of 20. 20 were built between 1938 and 1939. With British Railways adding a further 10 in 1950. They were named after manors in the area covered by the Great Western Railway, and 9 have survived into preservation. Although successful mixed traffic designs, neither the halls nor granges were able to cover the full range of duties previously undertaken by the 4300 class, due to their red weight classification. By the late 1930s, a lighter version of the Granges was urgently required for those cross-country and branch line duties forbidden to heavier locomotives. A new, lighter Swindon No. 14 boiler was therefore designed, and as with the Grange class, the driving wheels and motion components were recovered from withdrawn members of the 4300 class. The Manor class, with an axle loading of just over 17 tonnes, could be utilised on many lines from which the heavier Granges were barred from. The first of the Manors, No. 7800 Torquay Manor, was built at Swindon Works and entered traffic in January 1938. By February 1939, 20 were in service, but the outbreak of World War II forced the cancellation of the construction of a further batch of 20 locomotives. However, after nationalisation, the newly created Western region of British Railways was authorised to build 10 more of the class, numbers 7820 to 7829, at Swindon in November and December 1950. A batch of a further 10 locomotives was planned to be built, but this was cancelled due to unknown reasons. Unlike the Granges of 1936, where the use of a standard design and reuse of existing components had produced a masterpiece, the initial performance of the Manors was comparatively mediocre. Were it not for the constraints of the war, there is every reason to expect that Swindon would have recalled the engines for modifications. The first examples were dispatched to depots at Wolverhampton, Bristol, Gloucester, Shrewsbury, Westbury and Neyland in South Wales. In October 1938, No. 7805 Broome Manor underwent clearance tests between Rhuaben and Barmouth, and subsequently the class were used over the main lines of the Cambrian Railways, with its headquarters and works at Oswestry. The Manors were also successfully employed in the West Country, where they were used for banking and piloting trains over the Devon banks between Newton Abbot and Plymouth. Their light axle loading also allowed them across the Tamar Bridge and on the branch lines of Cornwall. By 1959, 21 manors were congregated in Mid and South Wales. Their most prestigious working was the Cambrian Coast Express, where a manor took over from a king or a castle at Shrewsbury and worked through to Aberystwyth. Other members of the class operated in the Birmingham, Gloucester and Hereford areas, while the handful stationed at Reading frequently ventured onto the southern region line to Guildford and Red Hill. The first manor to be withdrawn was number 7809 Childry Manor of Shrewsbury Depot in April 1963, and was cut up at Swindon. By May 1965 the numbers had been halved, and the final two in service, number 7808 Cookham Manor of Gloucester and 7829 Ramsbury Manor of Didcot, were condemned in December 1965. Remarkably, for a relatively small class of 30, 9 examples have been preserved, all of which were withdrawn from British Railways service in 1965. 9 members of the Manor class have survived into preservation, with 4 being Great Western and the remainder being BR built examples. One member of the class, number 7808 Cookham Manor, was purchased directly from BR service for preservation by the Great Western Society. The remaining 8 engines were all rescued from Barry Scrapyard, with the first member of the class, number 7827 Lyddham Manor, being rescued in June 1970 and left as the 5th departure from Barry Island. The last member of the class to be rescued from Barry was number 7828 Odney Manor, being rescued in June 1981, leaving as the 133rd departure. All 9 members of the Manor class have operated at some point in their preserved careers, and of the 9 Manors to have survived, all 4 Great Western built engines have seen mainline operation, those being number 7802 Bradley Manor, 7808 Cookham Manor, 7812 Earlstoke Manor, and 7819 Hinton Manor. In the 1970s, number 7808 Cookham Manor was used by the Great Western Society to haul 9 vintage ex-Great Western carriages on an annual outing on the main line from Didcot to Birmingham. Today, 7808 is on static display inside the Great Western Society shed at Didcot, awaiting an overhaul. 7812 Earlstoke Manor only worked a small number of rail tours between April and June 1982. Also certified for mainline operation in the 1980s was fellow Severn Valley Railway based engine 7819 Hinton Manor. It worked a number of rail tours along former Great Western routes, including the Cambrian coast, and played a big part in 1985 during the 150th anniversary of the Great Western Railway. 7819 was operational until August 2018, and the engine is now on static display inside the engine house awaiting an overhaul. 7802 Bradley Manor was the last and most recent member of the class to have operated on the national network, being withdrawn from the main line in 2007. Following the requirement that mainline certified steam engines had to have OTMR fitted by the end of the year. Its last overhaul was completed in November 2015. However, it was not certified to operate on the main line. In 2019, an agreement was reached to send 7802 to the West Somerset Railway between May and October in exchange for 6960 Ravelingham Hall, coming to the Severn Valley for a similar period. Whilst working on the West Somerset on the 7th of July, the right-hand piston rod broke due to fatigue caused by a previously unknown fatigue defect in the metal, damaging the cylinder block beyond repair. In the earlier years of preservation, such a mishap would have probably confined Bradley Manor to be permanently retired as a static exhibit. But with developments in the heritage movement, in terms of casting replacement cylinder blocks, the first Manor class cylinder blocks since the 1950s to be cast, which after machining were delivered in 2021. None of the BR built Manors have operated on the main line in preservation. I'd like to thank you all for watching and listening. If you liked it, feel free to leave a like, feel free to leave a comment and suggest what classes of locomotive we could cover on the series next. And yes, thank you, and good.